Hey guys, have you ever heard about Exirio? I think you should. And that's why I invited David and Piero to come on the show to tell you what Exirio is actually about. But to give you a little bit of a teaser, normally when we talk about real estate investing or investing in general, the assumption is that we are investing in the general area that we live in. Meaning like we all being in the United States, we invest typically in the US and we're using our dollars. If you're listening in Australia, you use Australian dollars. But what happens if you want to invest in a place that is favorable and you need to use the other place's currency? So, I'm from Germany, so let's assume I would find a great deal in Germany and we know they have the euro. And right now it's really helpful because the euro is down, the dollar is up. I want to invest there. But what platform, what tool can I use to see how my investments are actually doing when they are transacted in different currencies? And that's what Exirio can do. And we want to talk about it, introduce it to you and see if this is something that you want to use. And you can obviously first use it just using dollars, pounds, or Australian dollars or euros exclusively. But as soon as you were to say, I now want to reach out and do more, then your platform where all your financial information can be stored and evaluated would already be ready for that. So let's listen in and see what Exirio can really do. Hello and welcome to another episode of the Ideal Investor Show. We have something really special, international, almost global today for you. We have David, who is currently in Miami, and Piero is at midnight somewhere. Where are you, Piero?
I'm in Dubai.
In Dubai, yeah. Okay, so midnight in Dubai, and I'm in San Diego as always. So welcome to the show, David and Piero.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Awesome. So David and Piero are from an organization called Exirio, and we're going to learn today what that is and how that works and how that can help us as investors. But before we do that, I want to ask, and maybe we start out with you, David, how did you actually hook up with Piero and what is Exirio?
Very good. So Piero and I met 15 plus years ago in business school. I have a background in computer science, then I went into finance, into business. Piero has a deep background in finance and investment banking. We met 15 years ago and we've done a lot of things together, always around investments, asset management, etc. We've done projects together, we've done investments together. And then living as expats outside our home countries, we found that we had this personal need to properly track our wealth and our investments with a spreadsheet. At some point, we realized why we're still using a spreadsheet. It's 2020. There must be a better way of doing this, and there wasn't. So we decided to build it.
Okay, yeah, that's awesome. So based on that, what were maybe some of the things that you felt that you were missing and that you now with the Exirio also trying to solve? What is kind of like not the secret sauce, but the benefits of anybody who would basically start getting into using the system?
The main thing that was missing was the multi-currency, multi-asset. So there were domestic solutions. If you're in the US, there are good solutions that work in dollars. There were some solutions that work for one specific asset class. But if you had real estate, stocks, crypto, funds, ETFs, watches, rings, cars, you name it, there wasn't a solution to integrate everything with different currencies, different countries, different jurisdictions. So everyone we talk to, we have a lot of friends that were in the target segment, professionals that are saving for their retirement, for their families. Everybody was using a spreadsheet. And that was mostly that people with some complexity, either with the multi-asset angle or with the multi-currency angle.
Okay, yeah, that's awesome. And maybe, Piero, if you allow me to ask you for the exchange, I know that a lot of our American audience members may not be necessarily that familiar with when it comes to exchange and currency fluctuations. And maybe it's a good opportunity that now we have parity with the euro. It's all easier, but it wasn't always that way. I still remember when I first started coming to the US, the euro was like 120, 125, something like that. So that always required calculation. But maybe you can touch a little bit, for one, the benefits and detriments of the exchange rates, but also in the context of investments. I can imagine I'm, for example, considering purchasing something in Spain, and I'm kind of happy that the euro has come down so much, but maybe you can go into that.
Well, the impact of FX really depends on the kind of investment that one makes. When it comes to real estate, it's a lot simpler to assess than when it comes to stocks or bonds. But generally, in one way or the other, everybody is impacted by FX rates. And the ability to track the volatility, the movement of a rate also means the ability to understand whether the performance of an investment, denominated in a different currency compared to the base currency of an investor, is really coming from the asset or the rate. So, for example, if you buy a property now in Europe and you're a dollar investor, you're buying essentially a parity. So you spend $1 million, you're buying €1 million worth of property. But then if the euro goes back to 1.5, your performance will have been massively impacted by it without, the underlying property having changed in value. So the moment in which you look at assets that are denominated in a currency different from your own currency, and your own currency is generally the currency in which either you make money or you pay taxes. That generally is the reference currency for anyone. So that's something that we had in mind since day one with Exirio. So again, because we have been thinking about experts and investors that have exposures across different jurisdictions, we built a system that allows the maximum possible currency flexibility. So you can choose what your reference currency is. You can change that at any point in time. And for any investment denominated in any other currency, you can split the performance from the intrinsic performance of the investment to the one that is actually related to FX movements, which are always largely, or if not entirely, out of an investor control. So you receive that variability, sometimes in your favor, sometimes not in your favor.
So let me just try to say this in my own words. If you go back to the example and my property, let's say I bought it for $1 million and it went down because the Spanish economy isn't doing so well, let's say to 750,000, but your prediction about the currency of the euro goes up to 1.5, which I don't know if it's ever been that high, but let's just pretend. So then
I think it got almost that high.
Yeah, maybe it was.
But it's not a prediction, and this is not investment advice.
No, exactly.
Absolutely not.
You're absolutely right, David. Thanks for reminding me. I always need to say this, especially when we put it on YouTube. But we put this actually in the thing before we start the actual recording. But no, you're right. So my 1 million would be then 1.5 million euros. But since it's only 750,000 worth, if I wanted to sell it, I would make maybe something like 1.3. So I would still have a gain if I convert it back and sell it and convert it back into dollars, versus if I basically bought the same thing here and I stay in the same currency and nothing changed and it went down by $250,000 or something like that. Now, what you were pointing out, and I don't know, maybe David, as the computer guy, you can say, would somebody who is on Exirio basically see both? How much is it worth in its local currency and how much is it worth in my, what did you call it, anchor currency or my chosen currency?
Yeah, we call it owner currency or base currency. And yes, all the holdings, all your investments that you can have in the app, you can have it in that currency, which you can also change, or on the denomination of that investment, and switch back and forth. Not only in a specific point in time, we keep all the history of all the currency exchanges, so you can see all the evolution, and we'll also calculate all your performance metrics, either in the investment or holding currency or in your base currency. So for those people who like metrics and numbers, there are plenty to play with.
Yeah, and I know that some people struggle with, in their head doing percentage calculations and stuff like that, so having a software in the background who does that for you is, I'm sure, very much appreciated. Now, one thing when I was thinking and preparing for our call, I've been meaning to ask you is a lot, and I'm not really that familiar with the bond market, so you guys have to help me out with that. But with stocks, I know at least the more commonly known companies. I know this, for example, for like big German companies like Bayer or BASF or Siemens or so forth. I could theoretically go through my normal exchange and get, meaning like Ameritrade or Fidelity or whatever kind of platform I'm using, or Charles Schwab, and then buy them here in the US, or I can buy them basically in their original market. Is there anything for our audience that you would say it's beneficial to buy it where they're headquartered, or anything along those lines? And again, it's educational, but people might say, why don't I just buy it in New York?
David, you want to talk about equity and I talk about bonds?
Well, we're going to track it no matter what. We connect to more than 10,000 institutions in the US and Europe. So for us, it's agnostic. Now, yes, there are a few differences. Normally, US brokers tend to be more efficient and cheaper than European markets. But a lot depends on where you live. For example, I don't think Fidelity is going to be available for somebody who is a German resident or a Spanish resident. Most of our users tend to be on interactive brokers, most of our international users, because they do open accounts regardless of where you live, I suppose. So it does make a difference, but it's country by country. Which are the ones that we see the most internationally would be interactive brokers, Swissquote, Robinhood, eToro, the Giro in Europe. Most of those will give you a very wide exposure to international equities. For bonds, it's going to be a much trickier, but Piero used to be a bond trader, so he knows where to find them.
Yeah, Piero knows that with bonds. Tell us about that.
Yeah, I mean, bonds are trickier in the sense that there's no exchange for bonds. There are some small exchanges where prices are quoted, but it's really a market made by market makers. So you certainly don't have reliable public sources of pricing. They may be reliable for small sizes, but it's certainly nowhere near as liquid or reliable as it is for equities. Now, generally, bonds are classified, but if you're a US buyer, they have one kind of bond. Otherwise, if you're a European buyer, you use different kind of bond. Is like Reg S versus 144A, different kind of registration. It makes no difference when it comes to the risk and the return. So from that point of view, if you are a US investor, you buy one type. If you're a European investor, you buy a different type, but it's exactly the same risk and pretty much generally the same liquidity. So it really makes little difference. And from our point of view, it is tracked in exactly the same way. Pricing wise, anyone that provides pricing would agree with this statement. You have a broker that has sold you the bond, and that would be the most likely, the most valuable source of valuation, even though, especially when it's a size that is not like retail size, that is not like a few $1,000s, but is more like maybe $100,000 or $200,000, the price may change substantially when you actually try to trade, depending on the issuer.
Right, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, for our audience, mainly coming into the shows from a real estate investing perspective, there's always the correlation of, at least for the US market, the US Treasury bond with the mortgage rates, right? Because most mortgage rates are either based on 2-year or 10-year Treasury bonds. And I would probably say, especially lately in this year, that, the main driver for that is actually the Fed, right? And it's not really the customer or not even the government. It's more like what the Fed does that kind of influences almost directly what the Treasury bonds do. But I want to mention, and you are the expert, please keep me straight on this. There are obviously corporate bonds. There are cities that issue bonds to build a new school and all kinds of other types of bonds. So just because we're mainly always focusing on the Treasury bonds because of the connection to the mortgage interest rates, it's a tiny little slice of what is out there for bonds. Now, you said something important, I think, for our audience that I want to kind of touch on, and either one of you feel free to answer, because you said, depending where you bought it, which kind of for me means, if I get this right, you are keeping and tracking the information, but that has to come from somewhere. And if I understand it right, you are not saying, okay, Exirio has these bonds and these stocks and these real estate investments and stuff. So can either one or maybe both of you talk a little bit, how does this actually look when somebody says, okay, I have, gold investment where I bought the coins in, let's say, in Germany. I have a property hopefully soon in Spain, and I have a whole bunch of properties in the US. How would Exirio actually help with that, and what part is your platform covering?
Yeah, what we do is we allow you to track and understand what you own and what it is. We do not custody money, we do not hold money, we don't touch your money. We are super spreadsheet on steroids that will bring you all the information and will make your life easier. To begin with, you can add any sort of asset class. If you have real estate, if you have bonds, if you have crypto, if you have anything you can add manually in a similar way that you would add into a spreadsheet, you would. You will put when you bought it, at what price, etc., in which currency, and then we'll give you all the exchange rates and all the calculations. Having said that, in order to make your life easier, we will connect to more than 10,000 different banks and brokers and crypto exchanges and pull that information so you don't have to add it manually. And if it's a car or a property that you bought once and that's it, you can do it. But if you are a frequent trader, you don't want to be entering manually all those transactions. So we connect to all those brokers that we've mentioned and many more, pull the information and pull it together in one place. But the investment relationship and the money relationship is with your bank or broker of choice.
Okay, and maybe Piero, how about any kind of fees, right? Like let's include that since you mentioned it a couple of times, so I want to not exclude it. If I say, okay, my trading platform for my crypto is Coinbase, and I don't know if it even makes a difference if I have it in a hard wallet or not for anything that is not constantly in trade, so to speak. Are you then using the fee structure for Coinbase, or for that matter, if any other assets? I mean, there's always fees typically associated with it, or do you just go and average it for the market?
Now, when we connect to an exchange or to a broker or to a bank, we will track your transactions, and with these transactions, your transaction costs. These costs impact your return, and we track them just as plain expenses. They will impact your return, and they will be displayed on the page that follows your investment. Again, we track them. We don't charge you any fee for that. That's just a transparency, an instrument of transparency where you can actually highlight what the expenses have been. At times, especially if you track these things manually, a lot of things may get overlooked. I bought this at this price, how many stocks or how many bonds at such and such price. And that's about it. That's what you look at, your cost price. What people tend to maybe forget is every time you buy something, you may spend 1, 2, 3, 10, 15, depending what you're buying, dollars to buy it. And once a year, you charge custody fee. Your brokerage firm or your bank is actually charging you money to save custody all these assets. So all these variables are tracked and with the objective of giving you, the real return. Because the real return is what you have actually made after having not just generated your profit or materialized your losses, but paid all these costs that are inevitable but sometimes overlooked.
Let me add two things. One is that we will give you your real returns, both in absolute and percentage terms, but also in annualized terms. We'll give you your money weighted return or your XIRR, whatever name you want to use, so that you can compare like for like. Because what most investors will face is that how do you compare the returns from a real estate investment versus your stock investment? You don't have comparable metrics. Especially in real estate, you always hear people that say, oh, I made a lot of money on this thing because I bought it at 100 and now it's worth 120. So I made 20%. Well, how long did you hold that investment for? How much money did you spend in renovations and maintenance? How much did you spend in municipality taxes? We will provide perfect comparable metrics if you give us all the information. And then you can really compare my investment in Microsoft versus my investment in a villa in southern Italy, which one did actually paid off.
Right, understood. I mean, I'm kind of tempted, and please take it as a semi-joke, Piero, but how about tax returns? Since you got everything, you're going to do a tax return for me?
It's funny you say that. Now, obviously we have a vision for what Exirio will be in the future. What we talked about up until now is what Exirio is today. What we want Exirio to do at some point in the future is, we would like Exirio to become kind of a one-stop shop for everything personal finance. Everything starts with understanding what you have and whether what you have is making you the money you think it is. So tracking is the first step. So understanding what you own is the first step. From there, you need to learn, educate yourself, figure out what it is that you don't know and have easy access to the information that are required for you to expand your knowledge across investment classes and domains. And then access advisory services, and advisory services can mean a variety of things. Investment opportunities that normally would not be easily accessible. And this is something that we want to be able to provide at some point. So investment opportunities, not like stocks and bonds that any broker can offer, but opportunities that are kind of off the beaten track that you may have heard somebody being exposed to, but it's not something that is that obviously available. And as part of the advisory, there may well be tax advisory. Obviously, it is fully to be planned and structured, because the moment in which you have an expert user that has got holdings in 5 different jurisdictions and income in 7 different jurisdictions, then it gets trickier. But it's perfectly doable, and we do intend to go down that path. But to be perfectly honest, I'm not able at the moment to give you any tax advice.
No. And like I said, we take it as a half joke. Although one thing that came to my mind when I was thinking about, and we had our little pre-call to see how we maybe have some bridges to our audience, to the benefits, to maybe promoting what you're offering. And for me, if I had to summarize it, I think your platform is a great place for, like David was saying, tracking the information, not just in the stale moment when it's being entered, like he said, with a spreadsheet, but as it basically is hopefully performing in the direction that everybody's expecting. And part of that, and this is, yes, I said it's kind of a joke, but one thing I know, for example, one thing that we do in our approach for Ideal Wealth Grower is what we call cash flow parking. And for cash flow parking, meaning like the cash flow passive income that comes out of the real estate investments, we are using a platform that allows fractional real estate investing. And obviously, because of that, starting at $50 per token, you can, if you do this every month, you can have tokens in a ton of different properties. And that platform actually provides K1 returns for each of the performances of each of those fractional property ownerships. Now, it's not so much really literally creating the tax return, but part of tracking and collecting, so to speak, I would say could be to say, okay, which of the different places, like our property managers, for example, they don't really do a K1, but they do an annual summary. That fractional real estate investing platform does K1 for every property. So this overall having the information all in one place and then tracking the artifacts, not just in performance, but things like that, to make sure that when the year is over and we need to basically to file, here's everything that we collected. Maybe not as far as, okay, here's your return, but at least here are all the things you need to give to CPA. I think that would be a great service to interact. So thanks for explaining that. Yeah, David, go ahead.
Yeah, let me add a few of the features we haven't mentioned yet and that our users use for something like this. So what Exirio allows you to do is to have all the information in one place. If you have a CPA or a tax advisor and it's the time of doing tax returns, you might be sending a lot of attachments. So in Exirio, you can add all those documents. You can add your K1s. You can add your mortgage documents. You can upload all those documents. You can upload all your transactions. You can upload all your valuation updates. And you can give access to your advisor. So there's no more need for emails. Your CPA, your tax advisor can have access to the exact same information. All the information is there in one place. And then this exercise becomes much easier.
Yeah, that's very good to know. And I mean, I can say this for my own operations in our operations company. It is possible for those in the audience who may not that familiar with it, that, for example, I have somebody who helps with some of the financial transactions and she has a limited access to the bank account. So she can't spend our money, but she can track as if she were to directly get the same statements that we get. And I think that's kind of one similar little aspect. Now, one thing before we get to the last few questions in our show today, I wanted to ask, because when people, and I'm the same, I'm always oftentimes accused of being pretty conservative. I'm thinking, okay, so to do what you're describing, David and Piero, you need the access of the transaction at some point, the different assets, wherever they have been bought and for whatever kind of currency they have been bought. All of that needs to be populated. And then I'm imagining if you really want to keep it current, you also need to have access to the places that provide the information, like more or less, I would call it, to all my different accounts that I'm currently having. and can access myself, which I would ask, and I'm asking this also, I believe, on behalf of the audience, how do you and what do you do to keep all of this secure in light of the fact that every day we hear some other company got broken into and in personal information
Yeah,
stored?
absolutely. Of course, it is a concern. And of course, nobody can ever guarantee 100% safety. I can tell you what we do. Since day one, we decided that the first priority was security. Then comes bug fixing, then comes new features, but the first thing is security. And in terms of the things we do for security, is all the information is of course encrypted. Any personally identifiable piece of information, like your email address, is encrypted twice with different keys. All the information in transit is encrypted as well. So all those standards are met. We have had a bug bounty program running also since the very beginning. We get attacked by a bug bounty hunter. We have a bug bounty white hacker program where we invite and compensate people to find security holes. And so that's been running also for 2 years without any major issues. And finally, we actually do not care about your personal information. We give you this tool for you to use. I don't need to know your name. I'm not going to ask for your passport. I'm not going to ask for your proof of address. I'm not even going to ask for your name. There's a name field, but if you want to be mickeymouse@gmail.com, as long as there's an email address that I can send you the notifications to, that's perfectly fine. This is your information. It is for you to use. You can upload the information whenever you want. You can download the information whenever you want. You can download all your information with one click as well. You can delete the account with one click as well. This is your information, and this is the tool for you to use. We're not interested in your name or your last name on your proof of address. But of course, we take security super seriously.
And you can always decide if you don't want to connect a bank account or a brokerage account, you can always recreate on Exirio the same portfolio you have without connecting anything. And that's, when you connect something, obviously that's real. It's connected to an account. So there's no doubt that those assets are real. I can create now in my account of Exirio, a $50 million securities portfolio if I so wish. I just made it up. So, there's no value to anyone to that information because no one knows to whom it is attached and whether it's real.
Yeah, understood. And I mean, I get that and I appreciate that you described that, and the emphasis on security, I'm sure, is very highly appreciated. On the other hand, I mean, for our audience at least, and I would say this for myself, the real thing, like you said when we started, I mean, the main thing that people want, especially when they are on their journey to what we call the time freedom point, where you start accumulating multiple properties, multiple other value assets. It's one thing if you have one house or one type of stock or one account somewhere. I think the real challenge, like you said in the beginning, is when people are actually successfully beginning to invest in multiple different assets and want to track how they're doing, partially across the assets, but then also how is it overall, right? Like, I mean, for us, we always say part or an important aspect of our advisory and mentoring is to get you to a point where your income comes from your investments and you have the freedom to do with your time what you want. While it takes a good substantial amount of investments to do that. And obviously, I at least would always love to know, okay, for this month, how much ahead or behind am I with my passive income to be able to say what kind of a lifestyle without working can I actually afford? Right. So I appreciate that. Towards the end of our conversation, we always bring up something that is completely unrelated for most people to the core topic. And I want to ask you that question too and one of you has the chance to think about it a little longer than the other, is if you had a time machine and you could go forward, backward, anywhere you wanted to, you know what you know, but you are not allowed to change what's called the time-space continuum if you're a Star Trek fan or stuff. And you can come back, so it's not a one-way trip. Where would you go and why?
It's funny because we would go in completely opposite directions.
We don't want to be.
I would go way back.
We want to be far
I would go way back in the past.
Yeah. Piero, you start. Tell us, where would you go and why?
I would love to go back in the past, and I would love to be there when either the Great Pyramids were built or the Nazca lines were, I don't know if the building them is the right word, just to see and to kind of dissipate the myth. I've always been dead curious how all those things actually came to exist.
It's
That's
alien.
just one of my, yeah, exactly
It's
right. Yeah, I didn't want to say it, but I'm a big fan of Graham Hancock and that kind of para science. It makes great bedtime reading.
Do you know a guy by the name of Eric Däniken?
No, I don't.
Okay, well, I write you an email if you're into this stuff. Eric Däniken
Yes.
is a German author, has written all kinds of books exactly in this direction. I was more thinking when you were saying the pyramids that you would be like the advisor to the pharaoh so he knows where all the rocks are that he needs but no, that's
it's
cool. Absolutely.
the first pyramid scheme.
Yeah, the
Yeah.
first pyramid scheme. No, I'm very fascinated by the long gone past.
Yeah, me too. I'm a big fan of ancient history, even though I'm not so sure that really aliens are needed. Sometimes you would think so, but yeah, cool. But I ate up those books and they made me wonder a lot. Yeah. So how about you, David?
Well, Piero is in the Middle East. I'm in the US at the moment, and we work very well when we are remote. So I'm going to go and not only be far in space, also be far in time, and I'm going to go all the way to the future. I'm super optimistic. I know the world has many problems, but we live in the best time that it's ever been, and it's only going to keep getting better. So I can't wait to see what's more to come. I want to live a long life. I want to see what's coming. I want to go to space. I want to see humanity being multiplanetary. I just can't wait to see all the exciting stuff that science and technology and progress are going to bring. So, yeah, I'll go as far in the future as I can go, and I'm very optimistic that it's going to be a bright future.
Yeah, that's cool. I mean, if you go just a little bit north to Daytona tonight, you can actually see one of those launches going, into the future. They waited for you, so you can do it tonight if you want to. Yeah, no, I would be actually curious as well if AGI would actually allow to do that work and support your work without people having to manually type in this stuff in some kind of application, where you can just say, I don't know, Pierolina, just put all my assets into David's application and it would just magically do it. I don't know if there's a female
We'll get
version.
there. We'll get
Okay, cool. Well, guys, if somebody got kind of curious and has been dreading the fact that, they have all these different accounts to go to and all these different things to kind of keep track of, and they think, oh, wow, Exirio sounds really interesting. What would they do? How would they go about it? And how can they get that set up?
The easiest way is just to go to a website, exirio.com. And I think the best part of it is that you can try the app without registering. I don't know when you try an app to do a specific task, you try 2 or 3, you sign up for all of them, and you end up being spammed forever by the apps you don't use. We allow you to try a demo without putting an email address, so you can play with it for as long as you want, completely for free, and only at the end of it, if you think it's valuable to you, you register. If you don't, then you move on and look for something else. So exirio.com is the place to go.
If you prefer mobile app, you can use App Store, you can use Play Store. Both of them also have the same fully featured versions that the desktop version has, whichever one you want. And I think it's important to note, Exirio is not going to be free forever. At the moment, it is free, but we will start charging soon. But we promise that anybody who signs up before we start charging will keep the premium account for free forever. So for all your listeners, if you think this is remotely interesting for now or for the future, we invite you to sign up now and enjoy that free account forever.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for that. I'm sure the audience is even more interested now. And I want to actually put out a little challenge. I normally don't do this, but I want to give a little challenge to those of us who are listening to actually, especially because you described it that way, Piero, to go out and establish an account, whether you do it anonymously or in your name, and think about what we discussed about the goals and how your portfolio is going to look like when you reach the time freedom point, however far away this might be right now. And if that's the $50 million portfolio, Piero, that you mentioned, or whatever other version, I think it's fascinating to be able to say, I can kind of take a look at how my future might look like by putting some of that data in. and then see how that actually works, and in the process decide, hey, if this works so easy as it seems to be, then I can put what I currently have and just keep seeing my journey to the time freedom point happen.
I'm very happy that you mentioned that, because yes, we are building a tool that we hope that is going to be useful to our users, but our vision is always to help people reach financial freedom. Money should just be a tool to get there, because life has many things to enjoy, and reaching that point where you don't have to worry about money is what we want all our users to get.
Yeah, absolutely. And I appreciate that. And I think that is also why Piero and I agreed that, this is a good opportunity to introduce your platform to our audience. And money is the one thing, that's the stuff that we spend. And we are always trying to create that future using value assets, like you mentioned, crypto and real estate and commodities and stuff like that, so that it isn't just for us while we're here, but when you go in the future and you see the future generations, that they can still say, well, these three guys, many decades ago, they started putting this in place and we're still benefiting. All right. With that being said, it was really cool. It's rare that we have two guests at the same time. So I really appreciate that you guys explained to the audience what your platform is, what it serves for, what it does, and how we can all benefit. So I want to thank you both, Piero and David, for being on the show. And we will put all the information in the show notes, so that people that are interested can actually set up an account, real or fake, and see how everything works.
Fantastic. Thank you very much for your time.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Thanks for listening, and I hope you enjoyed today's episode of the Ideal Investor Show. More info and the links we mentioned during the show are in the show notes, or you can go to our website at idealwealthgrower.com and sign up for the Apple Podcast link. And if you like to talk to me, sign up for a strategy call. Hopefully you want to share what you learned with your network and bring more people in. We are really eager to hear your comments. And until next time, be well, stay safe, and ciao.